What's the most unforgettable thing your mom did for you? I never thought a simple doctor's appointment would change my life forever. But when the specialist looked at my test results and whispered to the nurse, I knew something was terribly wrong. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I'd been feeling exhausted for weeks, bruising easily and losing weight. My mom finally insisted on taking me to our family doctor, who ordered blood tests and referred us to a specialist with an urgency that made my stomach drop. When they called my name, my mom squeezed my hand and followed me in. The doctor barely made eye contact as he flipped through my file, and when he finally spoke, the words aggressive leukemia hung in the air like a death sentence. He talked about immediate hospitalization, bone marrow transplants, and survival rates and percentages that made me feel like I was already just a statistic. My mom sat perfectly still, but when he mentioned there was a 6-week waiting list for the specialized treatment I needed, something changed in her eyes. She asked about alternatives, but the doctor dismissed her with phrases about standard protocols and patience. I was too numb to speak, but my mom thanked him politely and guided me to the car. Once inside, she didn't start the engine. She just pulled out her phone and started making calls to insurance companies, medical centers, and finally to my aunt, who worked as a nurse in another state. I watched her transform from my gentle mother into someone I barely recognized, her voice firm as she demanded answers. By the time we got home, she had filled 3 pages of notes and had a plan. That night, I heard her on the phone until past midnight. The next morning, she woke me at dawn and said, "Pack enough for 2 weeks. We're leaving in an hour." We drove 6 hours to a medical center where my aunt was waiting. Mom hadn't slept, but her eyes were clear as she marched me through the hospital doors and announced to the receptionist that we needed to see Dr. Brennan immediately. The receptionist said, "Doctor." Brennan was booked for months, but my mom slid a folder across the desk and said, "Tell him it's regarding patient file 347B from the Meyerson trial." 20 minutes later, we were sitting in front of one of the country's top oncologists. He asked who had referred us, and my mom simply said, "No one. I found you." My mom had spent the night researching every specialist in 3 states, reading medical journals, and discovering that Dr. Brennan had been running a clinical trial for exactly my type of leukemia. When he asked how she knew about patient file 347B, she admitted she had found his published research paper and memorized the case numbers of his most successful outcomes. Dr. Brennan told us there was 1 spot left in his trial group, but dozens of applicants being considered. My mom reached into her bag and pulled out a complete medical history she had compiled. "My daughter will take that spot," she said, not as a request, but as a statement of fact. 3 days later, I started the experimental treatment. The next 6 months were brutal. Endless needles, medications that made me violently ill, and nights when I begged to give up. But my mom never left my side. She slept on a hospital cot for weeks, learned medical terminology, and challenged doctors whenever their explanations didn't make sense. She fired one nurse, who repeatedly missed my vein during blood draws. What no one knew was that my mom had sold her car and taken a second mortgage on our house to pay for our extended stay. When I confronted her about it, she brushed it off and said we'd figure it out later. By the 8th month, my body was responding to the treatment. Dr. Brennan called it remarkable progress. On the day we received the news that my cancer was in remission, he pulled me aside. "Your mother is the most formidable person I've ever met," he said. "In 20 years of medicine, I've never seen anyone fight the system and disease like she did. 2 years later, I'm still cancer-free. The experimental treatment has since become a standard protocol, saving hundreds of lives. The hospital staff still remembers her. They've even created an unofficial rule they call the mom standard for difficult cases. Now, whenever someone asks me where I get my strength from, I don't hesitate. I tell them I learned how to fight by watching my mother refuse to accept that anything, even cancer, even the medical system, even impossible odds, could take her daughter away." But how about you?